Welcome to the Randy Report. I'm Randy Slovacek, your host. I'm also the writer and editor of therandyreport.com, where you can find me every single day on the internet reporting on the daily news cycle in terms of politics, pop culture, and entertainment news of interest to the LGBTQ community and its allies. In this week's headlines, the Human Rights Campaign has released updated population estimates showing that a record high 12% of U.S. adults identify as LGBTQ. LGBTQ advocates in Houston have announced the creation of a new emergency shelter for queer homeless teens. And Heartstopper star Kit Connor has been cast in the upcoming X-Men movie reboot as Cyclops. All that and more in this episode of The Randy Report. The Human Rights Campaign Foundation has released updated population estimates showing that a record high 12% of U.S. adults identify as LGBTQ. Drawn from more than 2.4 million responses to the U.S. Census Bureau's Household Pulse Survey, collected between 2021 and 2024, this analysis is one of the most comprehensive looks at the LGBTQ population to date. Here's some key data points. 40 states have an LGBTQ population of greater than 10%, plus the District of Columbia. 25.6 million U.S. adults identify as LGBTQ. That accounts for 12% of the U.S. adult population. More than half of all LGBTQ adults, nearly 54%, are between the ages of 18 and 34, a signal of sustained long-term growth in political and economic power as this generation ages into peak spending and voting years. Bisexual people are the largest group at over 7% of all U.S. adults. The Household Pulse Survey is one of the last major federal data sources to include a gender identity measure before the Trump administration removed sexual orientation and gender identity questions from roughly 360 federal data collections. A federal appeals court has ruled that Florida's law restricting children from attending, quote, sexually explicit drag shows does not violate the First Amendment. The court lifted a preliminary injunction that had blocked enforcement of the law, sending the case back to a lower court. The lawsuit was originally filed by Hamburger Mary's restaurant in Orlando, which argued the law was vague and infringed on free speech. The legislation prohibits venues from admitting children to certain, quote, adult live performances, including nudity or lewd conduct. While the law doesn't specifically mention drag, Randy Fine, the Republican sponsor of the bill in the State House, openly identified drag performances, including libraries hosting drag queen story time, as a target of the legislation. The crux of the argument is whether the law violated the First Amendment by threatening the free speech rights of patrons and of venues who wish to host drag performances. Hamburger Mary's further argued that the law was vague on what constitutes, quote, lewd performances. In her dissenting opinion, Circuit Judge Robin Rosenbaum said her colleagues were embracing, quote, mess around and find out First Amendment jurisprudence. She added that the state intentionally created this statute to, quote, chill drag, and that the vague language serves as an especially pernicious club to silence political speech. She added, quote, under this form of jurisprudence, a citizen can learn whether a law prohibits their speech only by taking a wild guess, presenting their speech, and then seeing if they get arrested and facing imprisonment, thousands of dollars in fines, and loss of their business license. End quote. LGBTQ advocates in Houston have announced the creation of Asia's House, the city's first temporary emergency shelter for LGBTQ youth between the ages of 15 and 17. The shelter is a partnership between Houston's Montrose Center and Grace Place, a nonprofit that supports homeless youth in the region. Through conversations with the youth Grace Place serves, Executive Director Courtney Sellers said organizers realized that there was a real need for an overnight space for older teenagers who may be too old for existing youth shelters but are not yet adults. Asia's house will have 6 beds at a time, and each youth will be able to have their own bedroom, a setup that Sellers said allows us to be trans-affirming in a state that's actively seeking to harm and eliminate trans youth. Residents will be able to access tutoring, employment skills training, counseling, and case management on site during their stay at Asia's house, and Grace Place intends to recruit prospective residents through a mix of referrals, street outreach, and a 24-hour hotline. According to estimates, over 10,000 young people between the ages of 15 and 17 in the Houston region lack a stable place to sleep on any given night. 40% of homeless youth identify as LGBTQ and may be escaping unsupportive or hazardous living situations. In international news, the Russian LGBT Network, a queer advocacy group formed in 2006, has announced it will shut down. This comes after a court in St. Petersburg declared it an extremist organization in response to a lawsuit by the Russian Justice Ministry. The advocacy group made the announcement on its Facebook page, writing, in part, "For many years, Russian LGBT Network brought together initiatives and activists and supported queer people across the country. However, its extremist status has now made the previous public format of its work impossible. Any connection to the organization may create additional risks for the people we seek to support and protect. People's safety comes first. Russian LGBT Network may close, but dignity, solidarity, and people's right to be themselves cannot be destroyed. Take care of yourselves." End quote. The group added that the organization's social media accounts will soon be deleted. Over the last decade, the Kremlin has faced global criticism over its crackdown on LGBTQ rights. In 2023, the Russian Supreme Court ruled the so-called International LGBT Movement an extremist organization. Please note, folks, that's not an organization. Russia's criminal code equates extremism with terrorism. In January, Russia designated ILGA World, a global LGBTQ and intersex rights group, as an undesirable organization. Russians who are found guilty of engaging with undesirable groups face up to 6 years in prison. In May, Human Rights Watch noted the Russian LGBT Network is one of 9 LGBTQ groups that Russia has banned after authorities deemed them extremist. In entertainment news, Heartstopper star Kit Connor has been officially cast in Marvel Studios' upcoming X-Men reboot as Scott Summers, also known as Cyclops. Cyclops has always been seen as the captain of the team of mutants, best known for the powerful beams of energy emitted from his eyes, which he controls through a visor and various pairs of sunglasses. Kit's star has been on the rise since his role in the acclaimed coming-of-age Netflix series Heartstopper, recently reprising his role as Nick Nelson in the series film finale Heartstopper Forever. Earlier this year, it was announced that Kit will voice the lead character in the new Netflix animated movie Charlie vs. the Chocolate Factory. And I recently discovered that, prior to his Heartstopper success, in addition to numerous movie and TV roles, he played a teenage version of out-pop superstar Elton John in the 2019 biographical musical film Rocket Man. Here's to more success for Kit Connor. And that brings me to the end of this episode of The Randy Report. If you enjoy catching up on LGBTQ news in a quick podcast, I'd appreciate it if you'd share it with your friends. Plus, hit that subscribe button to make sure you never miss an episode. I like to think of The Randy Report as the 60 minutes of gay news, only shorter. And remember, you can find me every single day on the internet at therandyreport.com, where I cover the daily news cycle in terms of politics, pop culture, and entertainment news of interest to the LGBTQ community and its allies. Thanks for listening, folks. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.